I'm unmuting. You are in the castle of the great and powerful Oz. I'm muting again. Well, I didn't succeed in muting, so. Momentito. Let me just check. Hello. Yeah. I'm here. You are there, and we are here together. See how we run. It might be set so that this person speaking is the one who shows. If I mute, maybe let's see what happens. I'm unmuted. So can we do something with view? It said something about control participants in that upper left drop down near the recording. Oh no, I'm shutting off my.
Hola, hola.
Hola.
Hola, hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Nos escuchas?
Sí,
Ah,
eh,
perfecto. Muchas gracias, Malin, bienvenida.
gracias.
Oye, bueno, si vas a compartir, vas a necesitar presentarnos algo, nos avisas para que te compartamos ponerte como co-host y puedas eh, compartir tus diapositivas.
Sí, voy a compartir.
Ah, muy bien. Gracias. Sí, sí va a compartir. Sí va a compartir. Sí. Ahorita estamos teniendo unos temas con la cámara, entonces tal vez no nos puedas ver hoy,
Ok, ok.
o ya es un éxito que nos escuchemos todos te escuchemos a ti y nosotros sí podamos verte a ti y la audiencia que se conecta en internet en unos minutos empezará a llegar.
A ver, me estaba. Ah, no, ya no me escucho. Ah, bien. Oh, ay, sí, ya me estoy escuchando a mí misma. Estoy
Ok,
como en. A ver, ya. Ah, sí. Como medio segundo después que hablo, empiezo a hablar. Yo creo que ya. Yo creo que ya. Ah, no. Ah, no.
ahí, en los tres puntitos.
Oh, ya me veo ahí. Muy grande.
Make co-host, you see that right?
Esa,
Ahí.
ahí, apriétale ahí.
Sí.
Ajá, ya quedó.
Ya. ¿Lo pruebo? ¿Ya lo están viendo? Can you see it now?
Sí, sí se ve bien.
Ah, bien.
Ajá, sí se ve bien tu presentación.
Muy bien. Igual se podría hacer como un. Ah, ya no me escucho. Eso es buena noticia. Si quieren, con esta cámara que tiene el celular, se puede hacer como solo para ver el público una vez. Ya
Sí,
veo. Sugiero.
tenemos temas con toda la cuestión técnica. Si tenemos oportunidad de usar la cámara del celular para mostrarte a la audiencia. Ah, no, me están diciendo que no, que sí tenemos un problema con la cámara. Lo que podemos hacer es que en un ratito, cuando llegue más gente, yo le tome algunas fotos y te las compartimos en correo electrónico.
Pero sí veo un video em, con una persona con gorra y barba. Ya vi sus piernas.
Ah, ok.
¿Ya vio? Mira, con esta se puede solamente, digo, solamente para tener como un sentimiento del
Ok.
público. Y yo no pude entrar en el enlace que me mandaron donde presentaron la conferencia.
Ajá.
No sé si me lo pueden mandar otra vez. O después si queda, o después me mandan el enlace donde queda
Hace
guardado.
la conferencia y como en 2 o 3 días ya se sube a la página de
Ah,
Justicia Global. El video en la página te lo compartimos por correo.
va, perfecto. Y recuérdame cuánto tiempo debo de hablar.
Son como unos 30 minutos de exposición y después otros 20, 25 de preguntas y respuestas.
Ok, entonces esperamos hasta el final, ¿no? Con las preguntas
Ah,
y respuestas.
así es.
Y me van avisando, bueno, igual yo soy medio, voy a tener el tiempo aquí, entonces no creo que haya tanto, pero si quieren que deje de hablar, solo interrumpan.
Ok, gracias.
O si algo no es claro, ¿no? Porque igual ahora el inglés siempre empieza un poco con los conceptos y todo lo tengo en español claro, pero si hay algo que no queda claro, pues con gusto me pueden interrumpir.
Ok, muy bien. Gracias.
Una duda, ¿cómo hacemos con las preguntas?
Tenemos un micrófono aquí para la audiencia y le vamos pasando a cada quien cuando quiera preguntar. Y en Zoom, Ata nos va a apoyar para, para, para que la gente en Zoom haga su pregunta.
Ok, bien, gracias. Los voy admitiendo los que están entrando.
Ok, gracias.
Hello. Now I'm speaking. Maybe do you hear me? Yes, very good. Excellent.
Hi, sorry. Let me find a.
For the audience on Zoom, could you please mute yourselves? Hi, Mark. Hello from Mexico.
Muted. Hello.
Hello, Mark. First, we will have our guest in the program. After she speaks, then we will go to the Q&A session. So in the first 30 minutes, let us be muted on Zoom. Thank you. So hello, welcome everyone. Hello to Global Justice. Glyphosate and GMO corn go hand in hand in a dominant food system that threatens our food culture, health, biodiversity, and nature. Global food production has become dependent on chemicals and hybrid or GMO seeds as a result of the so-called Green Revolution that was initiated in the 1940s and expanded with the neoliberal reforms of the mid-80s. In December 2020, as a part of an attempt to change this production model, a presidential decree was issued in Mexico, stating that use of glyphosate pesticide and GMO corn must be gradually phased out by 2024. According to Viridiana Lázaro, food and agriculture campaigner of Greenpeace Mexico, the ban is the first step to transform Mexico's agriculture system from one industrialized ban of pesticides, and dependent on transnational corporations, to an agroecological system that offers solutions to soil fertility, local pest problems, allows crop diversification, protects biodiversity and health of farmers and consumers. Now, 2024 has arrived, and we are seeing strong political actions resisting this change. The US, a major exporter of GMO corn to Mexico, has challenged the decree, claiming that it violates the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, the new NAFTA. There are also pressures claiming that Mexican food security would be threatened if glyphosate is banned. Malin Jönsson is a researcher with CONACYT in Mexico, and she is the coordinator of Semillas de Vida Foundation, a civil association that works with the conservation, protection, and development of native maize seeds in peasant lands and for a healthy diet. From seed to table. Until 2023, she was a teacher of rural problems and human rights at UNAM, at the National School of Social Science, work also in Mexico. So please, let's welcome her. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the presentation. I don't know if it's possible to get a look of the audience that are there, but well, I can see 3 people here at least, and we will make the best of it. So yes, I will speak about this theme about 30 minutes, and I think as you can hear, I'm not a native English speaker person. I'm originally from Sweden, so if it's anything is not clear, I think you're welcome to interrupt me and ask what's going on, because I know this presentation much better in Spanish actually. So, but yeah, I think we're gonna understand each other. But if you have any questions, I think after 30 minutes we will take them and the comments. But if you have anything that's really urgent, you can also interrupt me. And also, like if you stop hearing me or something like that. So I will share the screen. I think it's very important to, I know for 4 years ago, I'm not sure who of you people were here and listening to me speaking about this theme. So I'm gonna assume that you knew people, but I think it's because I think it's very important to understand a bit of the context in Mexico in particular, the importance of the maize here and the cultural importance. So here, for example, you can see it's a community in Guerrero in the southeast of Mexico, where they have these native, I'm not sure, you can tell me afterwards, but I'm saying native maize because it's in the Spanish, it's native, but I think maybe landrace or heirloom is the correct word. But anyway, so this is one of our collaborating partners in Guerrero. So we have the content of this conference. We're going to hear a little bit about maize diversity, and then the historical context. I think it's very important as well, understanding it from the Green Revolution to trade liberalization. And then the maize dispute in Mexico, that's what I'm calling it right now, and food security versus food sovereignty, and something about alternatives as well. And here we have, in this photo, we have some beautiful maize from Tlaxcala, Guerrero. I don't know, maybe one of you guys have been visiting this feria, this festival of maize and in seeds that they have each first Saturday of March each year for the last 26 years. It's I can really recommend it if you have the chance to see, because they have a lot of beautiful maize there to really get to know them. And these are actually from here, from Mexico City. So we have these native mazes are grown and cultivated in all of Mexico almost. They maybe have some small places that are exceptions, but even in Sinaloa, which is the biggest producer of hybrid corn here in Mexico, there are also parts of which they have native maize. And even here in Mexico City, we can see we have this lovely diversity. I would say that I would call Mexico one of the, well, like the world's largest living seed bank, in contrast to the other types of seed banks that we have, like in Norway, or we also have here in Mexico, like in Mexican state with CIMIT, where we have actually about 30,000 selections of corn, and we also have a lot of wheat, because we're going to hear about it a little bit more in a few minutes, but it's because here was the Green Revolution started in the 40s. So we have this huge seed bank, but I would say that this is a living seed bank with all the farmer communities and indigenous people that are saving and was growing their seeds generation after generation. They have done it for like 10,000 years, and it's living because you need the hands of the farmers to make it work, to really adjust the seeds, adjust the corn, the maize in this case, to the climate change or to the cultural preferences. You can see, like for here in Mexico City, for example, we have this red maize that you see in this photo, and it's still they're still growing it in one part of Mexico City that's called Milpa Alta, also in Tlalpan, but in Milpa Alta, because they make tamales, which are made from this corn. So they are this maize. So we're going hand by hand, the food culture. So if the food culture and tastes change a bit, well, then you will choose other seeds and save them and keep on developing them. And also now that we see the extreme climate, like here in Mexico City, it hasn't rained yet. And also I know that in Tlaxcala, for example, it hasn't rained yet. So it's a very complicated situation, but also with less rain, the seeds that are, the plants that are surviving, they are more adapted to less rain. So it's also a way of adapting the seeds to the different climates. And it's also important to understand a little bit about the milpa, the three sisters that we call sisters. It's with an I, like, okay. Well, the three sisters is a polyculture, right? We have the maize, and we have the beans, the legumes that are fixing the nitrogen from the air and making it a fertilizer, our organic fertilizer. And we have the zucchini that are with the big leaves are protecting the roots of the plants and maintaining the humid in the soil. But it's not only three sisters. It's like we have some examples in one plot. You can have up 70 different kinds of plants, and we have some plants like the quilites, the green leaf plants, that are growing by themselves and you eat them, and we have others like also the chile, and we have the tomato and the green tomato, and so it's a very, very, very special polyculture. I think also in the States you have it in some places where you have Latin American people growing, but also with the native indigenous people in the States. And well, we have the thing of the climate change, right? So we have extreme climates, and this is the advantage of the seeds. When you have the seeds in the seed bank, you can, they sometimes grow them, and they sort of, so they won't get, because after a few years, the seeds are not so good if you just don't use them, if you don't have very, very good conditions. So they grow them, but they're usually just being in the bank, and then they're being there cold. So they're not changing according to the climate. And these seeds that are being saved and are being recultivated, they are changing their DNA actually. So it's in conclusion, it's essential this biodiversity, maize diversity is essential in Mexico in food culture, in history, in economy, in identity. I think it's amazing that we have these, for example, maize gods from the different, when the maize is young, there is one god. When the maize is a little bit older, there's another one, because you also use the maize in different. I lost the word, but in different stages of the cultivation process. For example, just eating the cob, it's have to be very young and very soft, and then you wait for a few months, and then you will have it for making the wheat or the nixtamalization process and making the tortilla with the dry corn. So it's also like the history and the religions have gone hand by hand with the development of the maize. And here we see another maize that's actually from Milpa Alta in Mexico City. So we're gonna very briefly talk a bit about the history. So we have the Green Revolution. I'm putting it in with citation quote marks, because maybe couldn't call it a revolution, but you all know that that's what it's called in general. So it started actually here in Mexico in 1943 when with the president of Mexico at that time, Miguel Alemán, was funded with Rockefeller Foundation. I'm really sorry if I'm just repeating what you already know, but I think it's very important also to understand this context. But it was funded the first research that you were starting with to increment the output of corn and also of wheat. So this is why we have this huge seed bank here in Mexico. And it's actually, it was easier with the wheat. Wheat, it's called wheat, yeah, flour, wheat, right? Wheat, I think. It was easier with the wheat because quite fast, they discovered how to increment the output. And it can be grown in big plots and big areas, and it's relatively easy to grow in many parts of the world. The corn also, but it took a little bit longer time. And in the case of Mexico, in the States, you are having the huge monocultures, and in other parts of the world as well. But in Mexico, we don't have the huge monocultures for several reasons. One of the reasons is the Mexican Revolution and the reform where the redistribution of land. So we don't have so big scale of land. Actually, here in Mexico, it's about the average is 7 hectares. And I read somewhere that in the States it's about 400 in average. I mean, there are some huge and some are less huge, but yeah, so it's very different. It's a big difference there, but it's also because the maize here is grown in the mountains. It's grown with very different climate conditions. So it's necessary that the maize has different types of DNA to be able to survive. For example, very humid climate. Here in Mexico City, we are 2,200 meters above sea level. So it's a very huge difference. Cultivating here and cultivating at the sea level with summer. So it was that made it harder for to implement these new types of corn varieties here in Mexico. So it's also thanks to that that we still have the diversity in Mexico. So, but on a global level, but also partially in Mexico and also, in Canada, in the United States, the cultivation changed due to this research that we nowadays have in the huge culture. In the largest part, we have homogenic seeds. If they're not GMO, they're homogenic. They are hybrid seeds. They are certified seeds that are certified not in Mexico, but in other places, because here you can't take out the patents right now, but because there's no legal framework, we have succeeded to stop the privatization of seed. But that's a parenthesis. But on global level, we have big monocultures where the a semi-industrialization of the agriculture. And this is actually starting in the 40s, but it's continuing like in the 1960s, and we are introducing more and more seeds. In the case of Mexico here, we had these state-owned companies like Pronace, for example, which is national production of seeds that was privatized or eliminated in the beginnings of the 2000s. But they were the ones that started, and also other state-owned institutions that started to distribute the seeds, spreading the seeds that were developed and certified from public institutions, but also from corporations. And we can see here in parallel, we have in 74, Monsanto patented glyphosate. And today glyphosate, as you probably know, it's a patent that has been expired. So anyone who wants to can make glyphosate. But Monsanto patented glyphosate in 74, and it's actually just a parenthesis as well, but it's the same year that UN FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, sort of invented the concept of food security. So it also goes like hand in hand in some way. And then we have, well, in the case of Mexico and in other countries in the world, we had a huge state that, for example, with the seeds, but also with fertilizers, the state was controlling the fertilizers and was also controlling this buying and selling of the staple food. And with the neoliberal reforms from the 1980s, this started to change. And for example, we entered in GATT in 86, and then, well, it became World Trade Organization, and of course, we have the NAFTA agreement in 1994. That today is called, this was actually around these states I lost last time I spoke with you guys in 2020, because it was renegotiated and signed a new agreement that today is called US, Mexico, Canada agreement. It's also interesting how they eliminated the term of free trade. For me, it was never free, because it's actually have a lot of regulation, and it's based on not on freedom, but on a very unequal, economical, asymmetric world. So it's not free, but it's also like the free trade now don't have a very positive connotation, so they eliminate it. But it's basically for the seen from agriculture, it's basically the same. It's a little bit more like Mexico is promising to ratify UPOV 91, which is in practically privatizing the seeds that we can make the patents of the seeds. And first time they tried to implement that reform here in Mexico was in 2012, and then they also did it in 2020, 2022. But we are resisting this, because making it a patent, they're not calling it a patent, but making it private property, you are protecting the rights of the corporations and not the rights of the farming societies and the indigenous people with the seeds. So it's actually, well, a way of corporations to appropriate the seeds and take away the seeds from the countries where they actually have biodiversity, which are mega biodiverse, like Mexico, like India, and other countries. So here it has changed a bit. And if we see about, for example, genetically modified corn, which is one of the themes today, they're called modern biotechnology in the agreement. And it's not saying that you have to permit it, but it's saying that you should like discuss how to give authorization of modern biotechnology, but it's not reinforcing us as a country to permit it. But we have well, we're coming to this. Well, the GMOs as you probably know as well, are the most GMOs that are commercialized today. Yeah, I know there's a lot of new variants as well, and they're maybe not called, genetically modified, yes, but transgenic, no, because it's with the new types of genetically editing that don't need to transfer a gene. But anyway, so the ones that we are importing from that is imported from the United States, for example, and the soya, and almost all that is commercialized today is resistant against glyphosate. So, you know, if you put this plant, GMO corn, GMO soya, whatever, you can put as much glyphosate as you want, and it's going to be an easier monoculture. So we can see here how in the mid-90s, these are starting to be admitted in the United States. Actually, the lobbying began here in Mexico as well, as early as 96 and 99. They started to, they made the first proposals to admit the GMO corn in Mexico. The corn, as you know, have been stopped for temporarily in Mexico, but we have like the cotton, for example. Mexico is also center of a region of cotton, but like 95% of all the cotton in Mexico is from seeds that are property of Monsanto. So there were no resistance there because, well, there was no resistance movement. And I think it's also maybe a little bit harder when it's something that's part of our clothes, when it's not so obvious the how you lose. And yeah, so they succeeded in that, and also soya and other things that are other grains that are permitted. So here we go. We're getting closer to our days. The maize dispute in Mexico. So we have first authorizations of GMO corn in 2009 in Mexico. And then we made a class action against the GMO corn in 2013 with the campaign No Corn, No Country, Sin Maíz No Hay País, and also with the Semillas de Vida as well, as of course. And we actually here with this class action, we up until today, it's prohibited to cultivate GMO corn in Mexico. We are still in the court, not in the court, we're still in the dispute, and it hasn't been solved yet. Actually, last year in October, it was in the first level. They sent us in favor of the corporations, because what we are doing, we're sort of, the class action is against the corporations that have received the authorizations. Yeah, in that case, when it was there, it was Monsanto. Now it's Bayer Monsanto. And it was Dow, Pioneer, DuPont. Now it's Corteva. It was Syngenta. Now it's ChemChina. So it's all these huge corporations that are sued, and also the Mexican state, because they are giving the authorities the authorizations of the sowing of. And here is also one of the contradictions, right? Because you think that with this government from 2018 and then they can have the Mexican state will say, well, and we are against cultivation of genetically modified corn, that we will withdraw from this class action. But they haven't done that for legal reasons or different kinds of reasons. So we are still in this class action. Now we are importing about 40% in 2021 of the maize consumed in Mexico is imported from the United States, mainly from the United States. They have some exceptions, like sometimes we import from South Africa, and sometimes other places, but mainly from the United States. And this is GMO corn. Well, you know, it's like 92% of all the corn in the States is GMO corn. So we are not checking all the corn that's entering to Mexico, but it's basically GMO corn. And we actually found the first land-raised maize here in Mexico that was contaminated by transgenes, was in 2001 in Oaxaca. And it's also when you can't grow them here, but we can import them. So it's a big risk to be importing this. Well, this is not actually this. So now we're getting to the first presidential decree with the gradual prohibition of glyphosate in corn in 2020. It was in December 2020 when this decree was announced. And this is, just as we said in the introduction, it's not just, okay, we prohibit glyphosate, then we can replace it with dicamba or glyphosanato, or these variants that are varieties of the same. The idea is that this is sort of a showing of the whole agro-food model that is based on pesticides and is based on chemicals and seeds that are GMO seeds. So it's just two examples. But of course, some corporations were not happy. They are still not happy. So they started to lobbying, and they succeeded that in 2023, there was a new presidential decree in February that then separated two types of GMO corn, for human consumption and for food industry and feed for the animals. So we have these two, because the argument, how can we be importing 40% of the corn in Mexico? It's not logical, it's contradictory, and like, if we can't cultivate it here, how can we import it? Well, the argument is that the corn that we import is yellow, and it's for the feed, and it's for the food in this industry, and it's not for actually human consumption. That has been like the unofficial argument, or maybe the official argument, but we have also like made studies that seeing that flour of corn have some GMO corn and glyphosate and stuff. So it's actually mixing. So this is one of the problems, because then the US or the corporations behind US are saying, okay, so you're gonna stop import our corn. How is that possible? But the president or the government is saying, but we're actually gonna keep on as usual, because we are not supposed to consume the GMO corn. But we were actually quite surprised, because for me it was like, okay, so it's gonna keep on being business as usual. But then the journalists started to call, and it's like, but how are Mexico going to survive without GMO corn? And we were like, well, so you're saying that you're interpreting this presidential decree that we're not gonna import any GMO corn. And that was something, it's very new. It's like something that we hadn't heard of before. And it's like, okay, so how is this possible? Can we actually survive without GMO corn? That's what we're going to discuss next for the next 5 minutes that still are the time. Well, so in March 2023, just after the second presidential decree, they started with this how do you call it, tables of dialogues. Like the US said, you are violating the agreement, and they started like dialogue, not in the controversy. Still, the controversy was until August 2023, and they said, okay, so you have to import all. The US is saying you have to, within the agreement, you should import all the corn from that is permitted in the US should be permitted in Mexico as well. So that is like the essence of the panel of controversy is about GMO corn. It's actually not about glyphosate. It wasn't about glyphosate from the beginning, but now in the process, because this is a long process, and we are probably going to see the result about in the first sentence in August. But we know that in June, we're going to have elections in Mexico. And then in November, it's going to be elections in the States. So it's probably going to be a process that's going to be prolonged. But they have also included pictures of glyphosate, pictures like arguments that involve glyphosate. Because you know the glyphosate is well, since 2015 is the World Organization of Health is saying that it's probably the cancerogen. You can get cancer from it, so it's sort of easier to prove scientifically that it's bad for the health. This is what United States are saying, that you can't really prove that GMO corn is bad for the health when you consume it. And we have made a lot of studies that show that it's not bad for health. And we're saying in Mexico that in the States, you're not consuming it as we are consuming maize in Mexico. Well, that's also a long discussion. If you have more questions about it, I can speak about it more, but I'm gonna just conclude here. Because one of the questions, and like in the news, you can read about, we are putting in danger our food security. And this is something that could be argued, because the dominant food system is dependent on seeds or chemicals, property of the corporations. Of course, they're going to say that prohibiting our products is going to be bad for food security, and it's going to be bad for the population. That's the main argument. But we have to see in the context, like maize or corn is the most important grain in the world. That is to say that it's produced 30% more than wheat and 30% more than rice. And why is that? Because you use it for thousands of products. Like, yeah, in the US, it's very obvious. You have the 40% of the production of corn in the US is going for fuel. And this is a lot. And then you have the food industry. And the food industry is not just food. It could be toothpaste. It could be sort of a replacement for plastic. It's thousands of products, because all over the world, they're not consuming it as we consume it directly here in Mexico, but you consume it secondarily as feed for the animals, or maybe as fuel, or in other products. Well, in some places you consume the Tex-Mex as well, but it's not in the same way we consume it here in Mexico. So this is the model that we have. It's an overproduction. It's a corn overproduction, and you can see the results of this also in the US with all the problems of lacking of water. Well, I don't have to tell you guys this, but it's overproduction that is not sustainable in time, really, because it's destroying soil, it's destroying biodiversity. So, and it's a big part of this is, you can see within from the 90s up until today, the consumption in Mexico and all over the world had changed, but in Mexico in particular, from the beginning, it's a traditional consumption, like based on the milpa, based on the taco, with the beans, with all these a diverse consumption. And then we have now we are one of the world's greatest consumers of soda, that it's containing it's not even containing sugar, it's containing the corn from the beginning that you made the fructosa, the jarabe de alta fructosa, which is called syrup with the sweetness of the corn that you're making from the ultra processed. I'm sorry, I lost the word. So this is what we are consuming, and we're seeing the results. It's diabetes. It's another type of pandemic. It's diabetes. It's hypertension. People are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying in Mexico from diabetes every year. So it's a very complicated, and this is what they call food security. So I think that what we should have, what we have to see is that it's putting in danger the health, nature, and biodiversity. And it's not this kind of food culture. We have to see this kind of cold food security. We have to see it. We have to see what's behind it. What kind of food is it? We have to think about future generations, and we have to see what about the food culture and the health for future generations. So this is something. Oh, I'm sorry. Now the time is it's sort of up, but I'm just going to mention these alternatives, because it's also like one of the dominant on the agenda, the news, they're saying that this is the only alternative that exists, right? But they have other alternatives, and we can see here, real organic. We have organic products. We have also agroecology, which is sort of not now. Today it's not certification, but it's changing from going from chemical inputs to more natural inputs, and it's a whole model. And we have the protecting seeds in the hands of the farmer, biodiverse production, diverse consumption, close the gap between the farmers and consumers. These are things that we're working with in Fundación Semillas de Vida. You can see here, for example, in this photo, we made this National Exchange Seed Festival, where you can these are from Chiapas, so different parts of Mexico becoming small-scale farmers in exchanging their seeds to keep on the constant diversification process. We need government support. We need subsidized, healthy, and corporate appropriate food, and we have seen some of these programs right now. From 2018 up until today, Producción para Bienestar, Sembrando Vida, but it's also small steps. like the quote from Viviana said in the beginning, this decree could be a first step to change the model, but because it's so much missing still. So these are first small steps, but we need more. We have a law in 2020, law protection and support of landrace maize, which we have not seen the regulation of yet. So it's just in the paper. And we have now in 2024, there was approved the law to the right of food, to adequate and sustainable food. This is also something that actually connecting again the farmers with the consumption. And I think this could be, depending how you use the law and which type of programs will come from this law, it could also be a very important step. So now I will stop speaking, and I hope you have questions and comments. And I apologize for my English. Sometimes I lose the words.
Thank you very much, Malin. Do you have any questions here in San Miguel?
And if it's possible, I would love to see the audience, but maybe it's not possible. I have my audience here virtually. But
I'm very sorry. I'll try to and then send them to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hi there, thanks for the presentation, very informative. So my question is about President Lopez Obrador. I'm a big fan of his, but I've heard him often speaking of trade deals, like NAFTA specifically, in a very positive light. And to me, that kind of seems like a contradiction given some of his other sovereignty-based, independence-based rhetoric. So I'm wondering, could he at any time have dropped out of NAFTA? He seems to be enthusiastic, supporting NAFTA. I'm just confused on that aspect of it. Thanks.
Yeah, number 2. No,
Yeah,
I think it's actually.
Oh,
I'm hearing myself. I don't know if you can turn up some microphone. Why? Do you also hear me?
We can hear you.
But I hear myself as well. Well, now it's better. Okay, now it's good. Okay, so yeah, I think it's also contradictory. It's very a contradiction that he's saying yes to NAFTA or free trade agreements, and at the same time want to protect food culture and don't want to have GMO corn and stuff. But it's obvious as well why he does it, because, well, the US and also Canada in a way, but the US mainly is the hugest trading partner of Mexico. So it's like almost all our economy is based with the trade of the United States. You can see in the food production, not only production, but the food system, we're importing 80%. 80% of our trade is with the US. Like we are importing staple food as corn, wheat, rice from the US, and we're exporting. What are we exporting? We're exporting avocado, tomatoes, lime, watermelon, and all of these products that needs to have a lot of labor and also the special climate and things that we're producing here in Mexico. So there are some people that actually are gaining a lot of money from the trade agreement, and also with the cars, but all the industry, right? So it's not, I'm just saying about the like agriculture, but it's so much more. So in a way, I feel that the government has sold out agriculture in a way. You can also see in the secretaries, in the departments, that who is in charge of the Secretary of Agriculture. Well, it's a person that has been closely connected to Monsanto. And we have been against this all the time. But I think also it's like a negotiation in the government. It's not Lopez Obrador is not a revolution, it's a reform. And I think in a way this government has made its best efforts. Well, of course, it's missing a lot. It's missing a lot and it could be more. But I'm still very, very happy that now we have a public discussion about genetically modified corn. Like when I came to Mexico in 2008, it was so natural that we're going to import such a huge part of our corn consumption, and it's not a problem that it's GMO corn, and it's you're not even discussing it, and now we are having this discussion. It's not like it's not going to be from one day to another, and it's all the time. We see this with the glyphosate right now. We have different parts of the government that are arguing that yes, we have a whole system to replace the glyphosate use in Mexico, but it's going to take time, and we're doing pace by pace. It's not going to be okay. Today it's going to be prohibited, and no one is going to apply it. It's not going to happen. We can see, like here in Mexico, still DDT is allowed. So we're very, very far off, and we didn't succeed to change the general law of health to be able to prohibit the highly dangerous pesticides. In Spanish we say PAP, but I'm not sure how to say it in English. But these we don't have this to gradually prohibit and eliminate them. So we still have these very, very strong chemicals. But I think it's a big step in itself that we're discussing. And if we prohibit glyphosate, it's going to be, we have Paracate maybe, where we have now it's dicamba. We have a lot of that's going to replace it. So it's something much, much more profound. We need to replace and gradually replace the system and how we're thinking about, and think about biodiversity, think about health, think about future generations when we are admitting chemicals, and we have to take precautionary measures, not have measures. Okay, so now we're gonna try consuming GMO maize for 30 years, and then we're gonna see if we have a lot of more cancer. Yeah, that's a good idea. No, we should have these type of studies before we are consuming it, right? We have glyphosate, you saw it was permitted in 1974, and now we're discussing how we're going to prohibit. It's 50 years. We don't have that time we're going to lose, if we wait 50 years, no, we have now 30 years. If we wait 20 more, maybe we're going to lose our maize in Mexico, and we're going to put in danger a lot of the whole population. So I think it's contradictory, yes, but we have had some great progress as well these last 6 years.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Just wondering, with the effects of drought in our area and possibly other areas, what is the productivity corn crop of Mexico overall? Is it maintaining? Is it going down? Is it more vulnerable to imports, or is it increasing?
Well, I think depending who you ask, this is quite difficult to have one answer, because the data is very insecure here in Mexico. It's very based on a lot of political context, and it's also like if you see, you don't ask the average salary in Mexico, but because the average, it doesn't say anything, because there's so much inequality, and you can see that some like now I saw a few articles getting out that saying that, oh, Mexico have stopped importing corn from the States, and it's violating the free trade agreement. So it's saying that we're not importing as much corn as we did. But then you see the figures from 21. I haven't seen the recent, but as I know, we're still importing more and more corn, which is also contradictory. I think that it's not going to be like, okay, we're going to change for this agroecological model, and we're going to have a lot of more output the next year. It's not going to happen as well. Like if you see, it's a process. It's also gradual. If you want to use less chemical, I think here from real organic, they can explain it better than I can. But if you want to use suddenly you want to use no chemicals or less chemicals, it's a long process. It's going to be a lot of years before you can make a good soil that's going to give you higher outputs. And it's not an easy process. And they just started with this. So I think it's very premature to see. You can't really see so much results, and it's also a bit dangerous because since the how you say, the government institutions are gaining at saying that it's a higher output, then it's hard, and that's a historical problem. Then that could be sort of a factor when there's talking about outputs. And so it's a very complicated question, and I think you can prove your point one way or another, depending on what point you want to prove, unfortunately. And I think it's the draft, and I think this year we have seen it's not starting good. And now in the Mexican state, I heard that it has been raining, but yeah, San Miguel, maybe not either. And here in Mexico City, it hasn't been raining. So I don't think you can blame also like trying to change the model on, we don't have a solution to the draft. And it's also going to be a very complicated process. So we also have the factor of climate change. Yeah. I wouldn't say, if you were speaking to someone that's working in the government, they would say, oh yeah, the outputs are increasing and we are not using as much chemicals. But if you're speaking to someone that representing the corporations, they would say, I know we have, I don't know, food crisis, or they are lack of chemicals. I don't know what they would say, but so it's a very political conversation, and I think it's very hard to have very firm answer. I'm sorry. I don't know, maybe Mark wants to.
Thank you very much. Mark,
Yes, Malin, thank you for the presentation and for the work that your organization does. I'm wondering if you could speak to any cross-border collaboration by workers or other social movements. I mean, you've talked about the way the U.S. government and the Mexican government and corporations, et cetera, but are there, if you will, real people on the ground involved in this struggle at all?
Yes, definitely. We have a close collaboration with EATP. I think it's called that in English as well, EATP. You know it, EATP. I'm gonna look. We have some webinars now, and with Tim Wise and Karen Hansen, for example, they are working a lot with the analysis of the NAFTA agreement and the free trade agreements. And now, because of the panel of controversies, it's not, as an organization, we succeeded that we could submit our opinion in the panel. And there were also others like EATP, I think it's called that, EATP. They also submitted opinion about the panel of controversies. And the organizations from Canada, they were not admitted because they're not a part of the panel of controversy. But we have some webinars now, and they are in English and in Spanish. So we have, well, in our social networks, there will always be information about them in Fundación Semillas de Vida, but also in EATP, they will have, I think it's the next one. Oh, I don't remember the date, but I think it's this week or the next week. So it's also an ongoing conversation, but I think it's very important, the overboard collaboration. It's fundamental, because if we don't get together as the corporations does, then we're not going to win. It's a very good point. Thank you.
Dave has a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Malin. I'm just curious. I don't know very much about Mexican politics, but I have been tracking in the EU that there's a big farm to fork initiative. There's a lot of fighting around it, especially recent protests, which seem to be basically very pro-chemical in their approach. But the Farm to Fork did set goals to reach by 2030 of cutting their use of chemicals, agricultural chemicals, by 50%, and increase their percentage of certified organic land to 25% of their acreage. Is there, it's revolutionary. And, with Claudia Sheinbaum coming in, we hope, as a new president, do you think that there's any hope for that kind of initiative in Mexico, or is that too aspirational?
I think that's a very good idea, but I I think it would be very nice. I think, yeah, we should be able to make that type of studies. Yeah, we haven't discussed it that much in actually dates and figures, firm figures. But I think it would be nice. I think it would be a good idea to have a clear goal. Sometimes we work so much the day to day that we don't have the longer perspective. I think it's also we don't know what's going to happen in June. We know that Claudia Sheinbaum probably going to win, but then we don't know who's going to be the boss of the agriculture department. That's a lot. It's going to depend a lot of that on that, and it's going to depend a lot of in the agriculture, if it's going to be used as this in this negotiation and be sold out. I think, yeah, maybe we're a little bit stuck in this, seeing the next month. We should be seeing in the more long run, but it's every new government, it changes so much. So I think it's hard to see further away, but I think it's a very good advice, and I will speak about it in the campaign of in La Campaña Sin Maíz No Hay País, for example. I think it would be, even though the government has don't put so much long-term goals, because they know they have 6 years or they have 3 years and then it's all going to change. So, but maybe we should do that from the civil society. That would be a good idea. Yeah, I like it. We haven't talked about it, but I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
I think it's important to learn from other experiences.
And amazingly, they were successful. I couldn't believe that they got that passed through the European Parliament, but they did. And so to connect with the people who organize that in the EU, and there's lots of, I mean, Bayer is in Europe. There's lots of opposition to that, and yet they were at least successful in getting that set as a goal for the region. And the countries are actually working on it, and they're making progress. So it would be good to connect with those people and get stronger together.
Yeah, definitely. And see the arguments, because it's also when you make interviews and stuff about but how the whole agriculture production is going to break down without chemicals. And you can see the example of Malaysia, for example. They always find the examples that have, of course, a special context and special conditions and a special historical conditions. And then they say, but this is going to happen, everything is going to fall down. But it's also, it can be used, as you say, on the other hand. Okay, this is a good example. We're not going to tomorrow prohibit all the dangerous chemicals, but we can put as a goal to use them less. I think it's a very good idea. Yeah, I will look them up.
Good.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Okay, so that's all. Well, here, I mean,
Sorry, I don't hear so good.
the questions from Miguel and
Thanks.
I don't know if in the chat we have any other question.
I have one question. As long as there are not a lot of questions. I'm just curious, Malin, is there popular support for prohibiting GMO and prohibiting import of herbicides? Is that something that there's a very small active group, or is it more like something that people go, yeah, we don't want that?
I think it's I'm not sure about the consciousness in general. I think that if you speak, like when you speak about GMO corn with people in general don't have so much an opinion on it. And I think that, but when we speak about it and we speak about the problematics and speak about the context, I think it's very easy to make them understand. But and public opinion in general, if you see like the followers of our Facebook, I don't know, it's like this. Yeah, it's not a small group, but it's not huge. And I think also like people in general have maybe problems more urgent, not urgent, but problems that feels to them as they are closer. Even though it's always hard to like talk about, I don't know, free trade agreements, even with farmers, because it's like, okay, but I don't have enough to eat this year, right? So it's like, okay, but free trade agreements it's the free trade agreement's fault, or this is the origin. But it's like, okay, we need something more close to home. But I think it's in general, it's a hard question. I think in general people don't know what GMO is. But I think that people that knows, it has a negative connotation. I think that we have succeeded, from my perspective, we have succeeded with that it's a negative connotation. And if you know what it is, you know that it implies problems, and it could imply, it's always coming back down to what about the health, but the direct consumption of health from these products. And that's very complicated to say as well, because it's a whole ultra processed food. It's not like, yeah, it's a bit complicated, but you can. No, I think in general people don't know what it is. Yeah, definitely, unfortunately. And I don't know if you, because what would you say you're from the United States, right? What would you say in the United States in general? It's something, because it's from outside, you can see that it's some people are against, but in general, I don't know if it's people don't care or don't know.
There were big, huge campaigns in individual states to require labeling of this product contains GMO corn, GMO something. And they were always very closely fought, and always the big companies were pouring millions of dollars into the campaign against a very grassroots thing. And it was very close, but they would lose. The companies would win by a little bit. And finally, actually in my state, in Vermont voted, no, we will have GMO labeling, with great threats. We're going to sue the government. You're going to go bankrupt. And the government didn't care. And so that was going to be the first domino. And I know dominoes were going to start to fall. And so it was interesting. The companies went to the federal government, and they created a law that kind of was supposed to give transparency, but absolutely did not. And it included prohibiting states from coming up with stronger standards.
Oh no.
So they worked around it that way. But the fact that these campaigns were so close showed that there was tremendous opposition for people to eat GMO food.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't highly informed, but they just went, yeah, we don't want to eat Frankenfood. And so it was there. And I think most people in America would know, you know, that GMO means genetically modified organism, and like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think also that would be like the labeling here. There's a huge resistance as well. I think that people would choose, if they could, not to eat it, but It's quite hard to know. We have now relatively new labeling with too much, well, in San Miguel, you know, too much fat, too much sugar, and they have this, they are black, and it's saying like very clear, and it was implemented, I think, in 2020s, and they are still fighting against these, because you can see in the shelves, it's like it's all black, and they sort of changed them to put them on the sides and stuff. And I think people, but it's also like, okay, but all of them have this, so it's hard to know. Also, like, okay, but what do we have instead? Because that's also what people ask me all the time, is like, okay, but what can we do? How do we know if this has GMO corn or soya, whatever? So I would always say, like, okay, but you can look for things that are less processed. Free, but you can still support small scale farming in a very in a relatively easy way, and you can still find these everywhere if you looked for them. If you don't look for them, then you're going to Walmart and you're going to the easiest, the more accessible. But so it's I think it's quite hard to know. But I think, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think in general people don't know what GMO is. But also that's maybe because we don't cultivate it so much. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Is there an organic movement in Mexico if for the eaters to say we want organic food?
Yeah, we have in the supermarkets you can always find organic food. Yeah, we have Aires del Campo. I think Aires del Campo is San Miguel, and we have Vida Campo. We have some Mexican because in 2006 it made it possible to certify organic food in Mexico. The problem there is, like always, the problem with organic food, but maybe it's particularly noticeable here because it gets so much more expensive. Even if it's so much more expensive to produce with certified than not have certified, and maybe have like don't use chemicals, but you don't have it certified, and maybe you can find your market anyway because you have these markets in a lot of places. We have these networks with markets, and I think the organic is it's so complicated when it's certified because it's very strict, and it's very, you have the rule, and this is the rule, and this is how it's going to be, and it's sometimes very hard to obey it for 100%. So it's probably, it's like the positive and the negative, because you can be really sure what you eat, but it's very hard for the farmers, I think, especially here in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if you don't have any more questions, I will thank you very much for being able to talk to you. And it's I think it's so important to spread the information about these issues. And I think you're having a very good and important organization that are talking about these things.
Thank you very much, Malin. Thank you to all the people in Zoom and here in San Miguel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, have a good afternoon. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Malin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.